I never imagined that the happiest day of my life would also be the day I dismantled my sister's web of deceit for good. As I stand in the afterglow of my wedding reception, a celebration that should have been filled with unbridled joy, I can't help but recall the treacherous path that brought me here. My sister, Marissa, had tried to ruin my life not once but twice, poisoning every step I took with her venomous envy. Today, in front of everyone I held dear, I exposed her for the manipulative fraud she truly is. I still remember the early days of my adulthood when I first sensed that something was off about Marissa. Growing up, she had always been the golden child, the one who could charm a room without even trying, while I labored in her lengthy shadow. Her envy, concealed beneath a veneer of politeness, slowly escalated into active sabotage. The first time she struck, I was a hopeful graduate with dreams of launching my own business. I'd invested every ounce of energy into planning, saving every penny I could muster for that first step. Yet, just as I began to find footing, Marissa covertly leaked misinformation to potential investors. Rumors of my supposed incompetence spread like wildfire, and one by one, opportunities evaporated. I was left with a fractured reputation and a ruined dream. The betrayal stung, but I was determined not to let her poison my future. I learned to rebuild in secret, working tirelessly to regain my credibility. I found a mentor who helped me secure a modest partnership, and slowly, I rebuilt my business brick by brick. But Marissa's malice didn't end there. Not content with sabotaging my career, she struck a second time, this time in matters of the heart. I had fallen in love with someone who I thought was genuine, but Marissa, consumed by jealousy, wove false narratives to convince my partner that I was untrustworthy and cold-hearted. The ensuing breakup shattered me, and I was left questioning everything I had believed about love and loyalty. For years, I nursed these wounds in silence, determined to rise above her treachery. I vowed that if Marissa ever dared to cross the line again, I would make sure the entire world saw her true colors. That promise was put to the ultimate test on the day of my wedding. I had planned every detail meticulously, from the elegant ceremony to the intimate reception. I wanted this day to mark not only the beginning of a new chapter in my life with my loving partner, but also the end of Marissa's reign of manipulation. The tension had been simmering for months as my wedding approached. I had heard whispers that Marissa was planning to attend the wedding despite our family's explicit warnings. Deep down, I knew she wouldn't miss a chance to infiltrate my happiness one more time. And so, as I stood at the altar, ready to say my vows, I was simultaneously steeling myself for the final confrontation. The ceremony proceeded with the usual blend of emotion and celebration. The soft strains of classical music, the radiant smiles of family and friends, and the gentle rustling of silk all belied the undercurrent of tension that only I could sense. At the reception, as laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. I had spent weeks gathering incontrovertible evidence of Marissa's underhanded dealings, from the discreet emails she had sent to potential investors to the manipulated messages that had driven a wedge between my partner and me. I even managed to secure recordings of her confessing her schemes to an old friend, a confession that was as damning as it was unintentional. Every piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of her credibility, and I intended to hammer them in one final time. As the night unfolded, the guests reveled in the celebration. I mingled, exchanged pleasantries, and listened to heartfelt toasts, all the while waiting for the precise moment when I could reclaim my narrative. The turning point came during what was meant to be a light-hearted speech by my best man. I had arranged for a short break in the program, a moment I had covertly reserved to deliver my own address. The lights were dimmed, and the chatter subsided. I walked up to the microphone with measured calm, my heart pounding in rhythm with my resolute determination. "Everyone," I began, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Today is a day of love, but also a day of truth. I stand before you not only to celebrate a new beginning with the person I love, but also to share a part of my journey that has been hidden in shadows for far too long." A hush fell over the crowd. I could see curiosity and concern ripple across the faces of my family and friends. Marissa sat near the back, her eyes narrowing as if already calculating her next move. I continued, outlining the chapters of my life that had been manipulated and marred by a toxic force, one that I now knew to be none other than my own flesh and blood. I recounted the painful betrayal that nearly ended my career, the lies that cost me the love of my life, and the countless nights spent questioning my self-worth. I spoke of my struggles, the arduous process of rebuilding, and the ultimate decision that led me to reclaim control of my narrative. With every word, I peeled back the layers of deceit, drawing the audience into the raw, unfiltered reality of my life. Then came the moment of revelation. I reached into my bag and pulled out a carefully compiled dossier, a collection of emails, text messages, and voice recordings that left no room for doubt. This, I declared, is irrefutable proof of the lengths my sister went to in order to destroy everything I had built. I allowed the silence to grow heavy before I continued. Marissa, if you're here tonight, I ask you to listen. The room seemed to hold its breath as I recounted her first act of betrayal, detailing how she had leaked false information to investors. Every eye was now fixed on her, and the tension in the room became almost palpable. Marissa's face flushed with a mix of anger and humiliation as I laid out every detail of her second treachery, the calculated attempt to sever my most cherished relationship. I explained how her lies had sown seeds of doubt in the heart of the one person I loved most, leading to a breakup that left scars I would carry for years. I finished by telling the crowd that I had suffered in silence long enough and that justice, however small it might seem to some, had finally been served. I stand here not as a victim, I concluded, but as someone who has fought for every piece of happiness that was nearly stolen from me. A murmur rippled through the audience as people exchanged glances of shock and disbelief. I felt a strange mix of liberation and vindication wash over me. This was not a moment of cruelty for its own sake. It was a long-awaited reckoning for the years I had been under the shadow of her lies. The evidence was laid bare for all to see, and the silence was broken by the low hum of whispers that soon escalated into a cacophony of disapproval. Even my partner, who had been a silent pillar of support throughout my journey, stepped forward to stand by my side, reaffirming that I was not alone in this fight. Marissa's reaction was swift and volatile. She rose from her seat, her face contorted with fury, and began to shout in an attempt to defend herself. But her words were drowned out by the weight of the proof and the collective judgment of everyone present. I could see the realization in her eyes, the cold, calculating ambition that had driven her, now reduced to nothing more than desperate panic. I watched as she struggled to form coherent sentences, her voice cracking under the pressure of undeniable evidence. In that moment, I felt no compassion for her. There was no forgiveness in my heart for someone who had inflicted such deep and lasting pain. My silence was not an admission of weakness, but a statement of my own strength. I had endured her sabotage, fought against the tide of her manipulations, and emerged victorious. The redemption I sought was not about retribution for its own sake. It was about reclaiming my life and proving that no matter how dark the past, the future can be illuminated by the truth. As the commotion slowly died down, the guests began to process what they had witnessed. Some approached me with words of sympathy and support, while others looked at Marissa with a mixture of disdain and pity. I could tell that the balance of respect had irrevocably shifted that night. Marissa had not only betrayed me on a personal level, but she had also betrayed the trust of everyone who had ever known me as a kind and genuine person. In exposing her, I had also reclaimed the narrative of my own life. The rest of the evening took on an unexpected tone. The joyous celebrations of the wedding were now intermingled with an undercurrent of solemnity and reflection. I could sense that many of the guests were reconsidering their own relationships and the nature of loyalty. For me, the night was bittersweet, a culmination of years of pain, but also a moment of liberation and renewal. I danced with my partner, laughed with my closest friends, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe that the darkness of the past had finally been vanquished. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and unforgiving. Family members who had once admired Marissa for her seemingly impeccable poise were now confronted with the reality of her destructive nature. Conversations turned into confrontations, and the once unbreakable bonds of kinship were strained to their limits. I received messages from distant relatives and old friends alike, all expressing their shock and disappointment. Some even reached out to thank me for finally shedding light on a hidden truth, while others offered their condolences for the inevitable collapse of what they once considered a close-knit family. Marissa, however, chose silence as her retreat. She avoided my calls and never returned my messages. The legal ramifications of her actions soon began to unfold as well. Former investors who had lost trust in my abilities rallied behind me once they learned the truth, and my business, once on the brink of collapse, slowly began to rebuild its reputation. It was a painful reminder that betrayal carries consequences, not just for the victim, but for the betrayer as well. Reflecting on that night, I realized that what I achieved was not merely an act of revenge, it was a necessary step towards self-liberation. I had spent so many years trying to suppress the hurt and anger that had built up inside me, allowing Marissa's venom to corrode the very essence of who I was. By confronting her in front of everyone, I reclaimed not only my life but also the dignity that she had attempted to strip away from me. There is no forgiveness for those who betray trust with malicious intent, only the cold, hard certainty that every action has its consequences. I share this story not to gloat, but to remind anyone suffering at the hands of betrayal that the truth, however painful, has a way of rising to the surface. It may come at a high cost, and it may shatter relationships that once seemed unbreakable, but it is the only path to reclaiming your life. The scars of my past still serve as a reminder of what I endured, yet they are also a testament to the strength I discovered in myself. I have learned that the road to healing often passes through the valley of despair, but it eventually leads to a place where you can stand tall, unburdened by the weight of deceit. Now, as I look back on that fateful wedding day, I realize that it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. A chapter defined by resilience, unyielding determination, and a refusal to be silenced by those who seek to diminish your light. Marissa's attempts to ruin my life, twice over, became the catalyst for a transformation I never thought possible. I emerged not as a broken victim, but as a person who had the courage to face the darkness head-on and carve out a future built on honesty and self-respect. To anyone reading this who has ever been wronged by someone they once trusted, know this. Revenge is not about sinking to their level. It's about rising above it. It's about finding the strength to confront the painful truths, even when it means exposing uncomfortable realities to the world. There is no glory in forgiveness when forgiveness only serves to perpetuate the cycle of abuse. Instead, hold fast to the truth and let it guide you to a place where you can finally reclaim your power. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I found solace in the small victories, the regained trust of my business partners, the genuine support of friends who had stood by me even in the darkest times, and the deep, abiding love that grew stronger with each passing day. I realized that every moment of suffering had led me to this point, and that the price of betrayal was paid in full by those who sought to undermine the very essence of my being. I now live a life that is richer and more authentic than I ever thought possible. The memory of my sister's attempts to ruin my life has faded into a distant echo, replaced by the vibrant reality of a future that I forged with my own hands. There is no room in my heart for remorse or regret, only a steadfast commitment to never allow anyone to steal my happiness again. In the end, justice was served not by a grand act of vengeance, but by the simple, irrevocable truth that the person who tries to destroy you ultimately destroys themselves. My sister's downfall was inevitable, and in the wake of her exposure, the facade she had so carefully maintained crumbled beyond repair. I stand here today, a living testament to the power of resilience, and I can say with certainty that the darkness she cast over my life is now nothing more than a fading memory. My wedding day, which was meant to be a celebration of love and new beginnings, transformed into a defining moment of liberation. I exposed my sister's deceit in front of everyone, not for the sake of drama, but to reclaim my identity and to ensure that her betrayal would never again hold power over me. The journey was painful, the wounds deep, but the outcome was clear. I would no longer allow envy or deceit to dictate the course of my life. So here I am, sharing my story in the hope that it inspires others who have suffered betrayal to stand up, speak out, and take back control. The scars remain, but they serve as a reminder of the strength and determination it takes to overcome even the darkest of times. I learned that when you are wronged by someone you once trusted, the only justice worth pursuing is the one that restores your dignity and paves the way for a future built on truth. This is my story, raw, unfiltered, and utterly real. I faced my past, exposed the lies, and in doing so, I reclaimed the life that was almost stolen from me. And as I move forward, I do so with the unshakable conviction that every betrayal, every wound, has only made me stronger. I refuse to forgive the unforgivable, and I will always choose to honor the truth, no matter how painful it may be. There is a strange kind of beauty in the act of standing up to betrayal, of refusing to be defined by the darkness that others try to impose upon you. My journey is far from over, but on that day, my wedding day, I took the first step towards a future where truth and resilience shine brighter than any shadow of deceit. I hope that by sharing this chapter of my life, others can find the strength to do the same, to stand tall in the face of treachery, and to know that ultimately, the truth will always prevail. Every detail of that night is etched in my memory. The anxious anticipation before my speech, the palpable shock that rippled through the room as the evidence was revealed, and the final, irrevocable silence that fell over Marissa as she realized that her time of manipulation was over. I look back on it, not with bitterness, but with the quiet pride of knowing that I finally reclaimed what was rightfully mine: my integrity, my happiness, and my future. Now, years later, when I reminisce about that tumultuous period, I see it as the turning point of my life. I am no longer defined by the betrayals I endured, but by the courage I mustered to confront them head-on. The path wasn't easy, and the scars may never fully fade, but each mark is a badge of honor, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there lies the potential for transformation and redemption. This is the story of how I faced my deepest betrayal, exposed a toxic lie in the most public of arenas, and emerged stronger than ever before. I share it now as a testament to the human spirit's capacity to heal, to rise, and to ultimately triumph over those who would seek to destroy us. And as I continue to move forward, I carry with me the lessons learned from that fateful night, a night that transformed my pain into power, my despair into determination, and my shattered past into a beacon for a brighter future. I never asked for forgiveness, nor do I seek it. I only demanded justice, and on that unforgettable night, I delivered it in full. The world saw the truth, and my sister's carefully constructed illusions crumbled in the face of undeniable evidence. I will forever be grateful for the strength that this ordeal awakened in me, and I am resolute in my belief that truth is the only currency that can ever truly set us free. And so, as I close this chapter of my life, I leave you with a simple truth. No matter how many times someone tries to break you, there is always a way to rise above the betrayal. Let your pain be the fuel that ignites your determination, and never allow anyone to dim the light of your truth. I stand here today as living proof that you can overcome even the most devastating betrayals, and in doing so, you not only reclaim your life, but you also forge a future that is unequivocally your own. This is my testament, a story of revenge, resilience, and the unyielding power of truth. I have exposed the darkness, and in doing so, I have set myself free. May this serve as a beacon of hope to anyone who has ever been wronged, reminding you that the journey to healing begins with the courage to speak your truth.